Hey, friends. Well, so my theme for today, as I have come to describe it up to now, is it's a little bit, this is going to sound strange, but the phrase that came to mind was constructive self doubt. Now, what I mean by that is there are ways, and over the last 24 hours or 48 hours or so, I have found myself looking at life, looking at my life, but also looking at larger life in a way that makes me realize or begin to perceive that things aren't always what they seem. Sounds like obvious, but it's actually not an insignificant revelation. I've had conversations with friends and loved ones, family members. I've had time with my daughter, who's 4, almost 5 years old. I've had some with Annalise, my daughter. I had some experiences of getting kind of frustrated with her, which really rarely happens. It's an experience. It's almost like it's an unfamiliar experience when it happens to me, because she almost never does anything. It almost never gets to that place. But it's been, this is now the second week of school. Last week was the first week of school. It was a very chaotic week because we had people staying in our house, which was lovely, but it also meant that like the start of this new routine was a total kind of, it wasn't the start of a new routine yet. It was the start of a routine, but on top of that, a bunch of additional excitement and, different scheduled than we normally would have. So there's just a lot going on. And I think all of that combined to put Annalise in a place, and this is a young person who really kind of thrives on her routines. It put her in a place where she was just kind of on tilt, and she ended up staying home today. I was with her all day except for when I was teaching, and I could tell there was just an underlying agitation in there, and it manifested as dissatisfaction with her papa and whatever I wanted to do or say or request or require or demand or suggest, or it was a little bit of it was like a locking horns or something. And that's such a rare experience for me with my daughter. Great, I'm grateful to be able to say that. But at the end of all that, or through all of that, so one event that informed me was we went to her violin lesson with her teacher, and we had previously attempted to practice. I had attempted to get her to practice with incredibly limited success. We did spend some time practicing, but I can't tell if anything actually happened during that time. And it was a bit of a like locking horns, and I as a musician myself with a child whom I'm helping to usher into music and be not her teacher, but kind of her coach, who sort of helps her do the work that her teacher prescribes. I do a lot of reflection about where is my agenda in all this, as a musician who obviously would love to see her really take music on as something in her life. How am I letting that drive me too much? Like, how much am I really doing this in service of her evolution and her like ability to bring these skills into her life and bring this interest and this love and this beautiful art into her life? And how much am I running my own agenda when I'm working with her, right? I mean, from the outside, it might actually kind of look sort of similar, but it's categorically different experience, and it's categorically different effect based on where I'm coming from. So it's something that I reflect on a lot and try to really pay attention to and make sure that I really am in service of her, even if that means putting my foot down or creating boundaries or creating really consistent practice space, because that's what the practice requires. You can do some of the same things, just coming from the place of total surrender to service and I love that the root of the word educate means to draw out, and keeping that in mind as I engage with my daughters. It's always felt like something that's been really top of mind for me. I'm not trying to stuff her full of stuff. I'm trying. My job is to draw out her natural abilities, help her build the toolkit that she wants to have to be able to express herself in the world. That's what I can help her draw it, and there is a role for parents in that. That's not a passive role. It's something where we really do have to. There's work to do, but that work is different than the work of getting the kid to do the things that the parent would like to see the kid do. That's a whole different kind of thing. So anyway, I'm kind of leaning into that because it's been also on my mind. But after we had this kind of frustrating session where I really couldn't tell, like, am I in service here? I'm just kind of getting frustrated. Like, can I still be in a place of, should we just stop? Should we not stop? Got myself kind of worked up, and she was just stonewalling. So eventually we just stopped and went to her lesson. And she has one of the most, her violin teacher is an absolute blessing in our lives, because she's just a lovely, lovely woman, beautiful player, beautiful musician, and just seems to love teaching, just seems to love watching young people grow. And so, it's funny because I almost canceled. Annalise was in such a kind of like state that I almost canceled. But I didn't. A little voice inside of me was like, no, just go, just do this. Don't break the routine just because it feels like it might be a rough day. And I prefaced that. I sort of let the teacher know where we were at, and that it had been a rough day, and she wasn't feeling well. She was home from school, etc. Well, the lesson was absolutely beautiful. Annalise played really well. Her teacher had a wonderful interaction with her. She was quite focused. It was almost like unbelievable to me to see her focus as well as she did. And I kind of had to just take a look at myself and say, what am I pushing on here? Like, what is it about what I want to see happen that's creating this? Because so clearly the issue was kind of me in the earlier session. I sort of like clocked that something about it, I don't think I was like drastically doing anything too different than I usually do, but at this time, in this context, with all this buildup of kind of a chaotic and very full part of the time of the year, I could just suddenly see what was happening in a new light, and some of the frustration I was feeling just dissolved, because it was like, oh yeah, you don't need any of these things to happen the way that you want them to happen, and you can let go. And that lesson, though, that wasn't the only way in which that lesson has entered my life over the course of today. Even I think there, and yesterday, because there's some ways in which seeing my own patterns, seeing what is what, the difference between what something seems like and what it really is, especially when it comes to my own patterns and my own patterns of behavior, thought. That it just came home to me again. Things aren't always what they seem. And having a little, not self-doubt in the sense of like, lack of self-worth or self-confidence, but having maybe there's just a willingness to doubt our own minds' perceptions, or to doubt the stories that our mind is spinning. It's not so much the perceptions themselves as it is the filter that we're using to kind of make meaning out of them. Some degree of kind of skepticism with regard to that filter is kind of important. A kind of constructive self-skepticism, I guess. Because at the end of the day, one thing that's happening for me in a really powerful way is I'm seeing myself, I've spoken a lot over the last couple of months about being in a transitional phase, and I think part of what is coming out now is just a really deep desire to give myself permission to have my own feet on the ground, my own conviction in myself and in my impulses, have conviction in my impulses, and there's a I guess a weird way in which I undermine that in myself sometimes. I watch myself kind of like break that down or chip away at it. And I think that's one of those habits of mind that is, if we're not conscious of it, it can do some damage, because it's like it can just go to town and start chipping away at aspects of who we are, and in a way that's not constructive. Like, that's not constructive self-criticism. It's like undermining the core, the source. And I gotta stop doing that. It's something that where if I can leverage some skepticism at that habit, at that pattern, I think some big changes could happen, because it would arrest the thing that continually kind of weakens and just drags down the other impulses that are actually trying to fly and that I feel kind of ready to flow. And so, yeah, big stuff. Big stuff. And I will say, I think that this movement, if you didn't see my post from yesterday, I saw an osteopath, and he treated a wrist injury that I've had now for a month and a half or so. And I think some of the energy flow that I'm experiencing today, both the frustration and also the kind of like solidity, are coming from the energy being unlocked and movement beginning to happen again, and my being able to go, wait, no, that is bullshit. That's real. Let's not pretend those two things are the same thing. Let's trust our convictions. So, kind of a roundabout way of getting there, but that's where I'm at today. Thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.